Hi, welcome everybody to today's on-demand webinar on Consumer Duty. I'm John Richmond and I'll be guiding you through what we hope will be an insightful session about the challenges, opportunities and solutions under the FCA's Consumer Duty regulations. At TURN, we've partnered with CXCO to create tools designed to simplify compliance and improve customer outcomes across the distribution chain. So let's dive into how Consumer Duty is changing the landscape for financial services and how TURN is helping firms align with those new expectations. On the panel, we have Lisa Laybourne, who's the Director of Policy at TISA. Lisa's been at the forefront of engagement with the regulator, as well as collaborating with industry and other trade associations. We've also got Charlie Williams, the CEO of CXCO. Charlie's been helping organisations in financial services capture, understand and improve the experience they provide to clients since 2006. He's used this knowledge to develop a process for measuring and monitoring consumer duty outcomes and from the client's point of view. And finally, we've got Danny Barras, who's the operational lead and program manager for TURN's Technical Solutions. Welcome, everyone. So, Lisa, if I can start with you, can you start by telling us what data needs to be shared under Consumer Duty?
Yeah, I mean, data is a crucial part of Consumer Duty. Very early on in the implementation process, the FCA talked about this concept of not once and done. And that phrase was actually coined, I think, by Sheldon Mills back in 2023, early 2023. And the idea behind that not once and done is that Consumer Duty should be a process of continuous improvement. A continuous improvement in the outcomes for the consumers. In order to understand what those outcomes need to be and understand more about the way that products are designed and to demonstrate that they are being designed with the intended target market in mind, data needs to be collected and data needs to be shared. And it's absolutely crucial for the effective implementation and compliance with the FCA's Consumer Duty principles and rules, because it facilitates transparency, it facilitates informed decision making, and it aligns with those regulatory expectations for delivering good outcomes to customers. I think the data can allow firms to better understand consumer needs and preferences and behaviours, enabling the design of tailored products and services, and it ensures that all parties in the distribution chain, right from manufacturers to intermediaries, down to the final distributors, are aligned on delivering those consumer outcomes. I mean, the FCA expressed a concern around the data flow between parties in the distribution chain as early as December 23 during their Consumer Duty, the Next Steps webinar. In the transcript where they stated, we expect these concerns to be heightened if the industry doesn't demonstrate it's made progress. So it's kind of around this concept of progress and not once and done. But the success of collecting data and sharing data effectively does depend on having sort of robust systems, clear governance, and a collaborative industry approach. So with that in mind, TISA worked with other trade associations. It took a leading role with the IA in what came to be known as the Joint Industry Trade Association Group in designing the Distributor Feedback Template known as the DFT. And the DFT enables distributors to provide feedback on product performance, helping manufacturers review and refine their offerings. The DFT, along with its accompanying guidelines, serves as a crucial tool for overcoming Consumer Duty's operational challenges. And by standardising that feedback and enhancing the data flow, the DFT helps firms to maintain consistent practices across the industry, making it invaluable as a resource for regulatory compliance.
Fantastic. Excellent. So, Charlie, how can firms measure outcomes from the customer's perspective?
Thanks, John. So what we found so my business has been measuring customer experience in financial services since about 2006. So we've got a long history of understanding what good looks like, and more importantly, from the consumer's point of view, and more importantly, how to measure it, the ways in which to get feedback from clients. I think when the duty first came out, most organisations looked at internal processes. They looked at what do we do to deliver good outcomes. and then what metrics do we have which tell us whether or not we're doing that. So that resulted in a lot of process views, understanding the customer journey, possibly in many organizations, sometimes for the first time, and looking at the measures that sit around that. The duty itself gave rise to a number of assessments, fair value assessments. So how does my product fit within the marketplace in terms of price and value? Target market assessments. Have I got the right product for the market that I'm trying to sell to? There was a lot of product literature reviews around consumer understanding. And this very much fell within what Lisa mentioned there as the once and done. So in that big build up to the sort of the first year around the duty, there was lots of work going on in firms where they were looking at their internal processes and what they were doing, and these various different assessments. They also looked at the KPIs they used to measure that. So, for example, in contact center, first call resolution rates, abandonment rates, those sorts of things, which all played into the duty, and looked at the things that were indicating or were contributing towards a good outcome from the consumer. They'd also be looking at the feedback they were getting, so their Trustpilot reviews, FIFO reviews, Net Promoter Score, customer satisfaction scores, and complaint levels as well, just to get a view about these are the things we do. This is what we're trying to deliver in order to create good outcomes for our clients. What we looked at CXCO was really just to identify where there was a slight gap potentially in what was going on, and this was particularly in relationship to the ongoing business as usual type of scenario. So rather than a once and done effort of finding all this information out, we were looking at, well, how do you monitor and measure outcomes you're delivering for consumers over a longer period of time? Because low complaint levels don't necessarily mean you're delivering good outcomes. A good Net Promoter Score doesn't necessarily mean you're delivering good outcomes. High retention rates, customers not leaving you, don't necessarily mean you're delivering good outcomes. It may be very difficult for clients to leave, and therefore that's not necessarily the best outcome for the consumer. So what we developed based on our experience was a method by which you can actually get feedback directly from consumers about the experience they're receiving and apply it specifically to the 4 outcomes that the duty requires. That's not to say that the work that has been done, complaint levels and all the other information and data that's been collected is not of value. It's just a balance and a check across to say, but yeah, what do our consumers actually believe? What do they actually feel? What do they actually see? So we've built a program. We looked at a range of different ways in which you can gather this information, but principally it's a survey-based approach. And we went for the simplest possible, which was ask consumers: did you receive? Do you understand the products that you've purchased? Do you think they're the right products and services for you? Do you think the price is reasonable? And have you received good support? And that simple yes/no answers to those questions, where with a follow-up question where there's a no, tell us why not, enables firms to start to build a metric which is percentage yes against the 4 outcomes. So it's really, really easy. And the no follow-up, so if there's a no, well, why did you score it that way? Why did you tell us that? And then potentially a follow-up to fix the issue allows firms to address potential areas of non-compliance. But what it does is it builds over time with a continual surveying program running, specifically asking questions about the 4 outcomes. It builds a metric over time, percentage yes. And what we're seeing is across the industry, across all regulated firms, not just asset management, but right the way across the industry, we're seeing 90% plus compliance yeses. So it's a very relatively small number of people are saying no. And when they are saying no, firms are able to understand, interrogate that information and work out what is it that's going on. So is it that our documentation isn't clear to understand? Is it that through this particular distributor, customers are not seeing the same value as they are through others? And so you can start to manage your ongoing activity by really understanding what are the outcomes that are being delivered for the product that we're providing, and address the non-compliance elements. And we then provide obviously a benchmark to be able to say, well, this is where the industry is, this is where you are, and so you can start to understand how that looks. So I think our approach around outcome measurement is very much the the current state of where the industry is, which is we've done all this work, we've collected all this information. How do we monitor it? We can't just keep repeating doing the same fair value assessments, target market. How do we gather actual feedback from consumers about the experience they're receiving and apply that directly to the 4 outcomes? And that's what we're doing, and that's how we are supplementing the DFT that Lisa mentioned, and the data that is available to be shared with some balance from real outcomes from real consumers.
Fantastic. That's exactly right. So Lisa, look, lots of data required. How do we know that, what the FCA genuinely expects from firms in terms of data sharing and outcomes? And is there more that they can do to increase adoption?
Yeah, I mean, other than kind of the sort of the previous the webinar that I previously referenced, and we've kind of had some sort of more informal communication from the FCA in terms of that them going out to the industry, talking at events and recording webinars and their consumer duty pages, which all reference kind of that leveraging data to deliver good outcomes. I'll refer actually to the FCA's guidance, FG 22.5. And before I do, I just want to say something about FCA's guidance, because, sometimes people think, it's guidance, and so it can be kind of optional or taken with a pinch of salt. But guidance is actually intended not to be used in silo. It's intended to be used in conjunction with the rules as guidance as how to apply those rules and how to apply the principle. And I think the firm should really pay attention to the language that's used within the guidance. And if you read that very carefully, if you read FG 22.5 very carefully, it highlights and is actually very clear about the critical role of information sharing between distributors and manufacturers in meeting consumer duty obligations, and particularly about the requirement on distributors to provide the data requested by manufacturers. So if we take a couple of examples here in the guidance, so 222. Distributor firms are required, so really take note of that word required, paying attention to the language. Distributor firms are required to share information to support manufacturers when reviewing products or services. Where firms do not comply with this requirement, they may therefore be in breach of the duty. Another example in 6.68, to support manufacturers' reviews, distributors must, upon request, provide relevant information, including where appropriate, sales information, information on cancellations, and information on regular reviews of their distribution arrangements. So again, use of that very strong language, the word must. And lastly, 6.69, the requirement to provide information to support manufacturer reviews applies to all distributor firms in the distribution chain. We expect all firms in a distribution chain to cooperate. I don't think that can be any clearer. I think that's extremely clear.
Yeah, absolutely. You're right. The use of those words really are critical and crucial. So that's good to point that out. Okay, so Danny, turning to you now, what makes TURN a standout solution for consumer duty compliance?
Yeah, TURN solution unites asset managers, distributors, and the data partners for seamless data sharing and communication. It's a standout solution because not only are we streamlining the operational reporting of the DFT, which was designed to enable the distribution chain to easily report on the quantitative data items, but how can you provide the manufacturers with the more qualitative information? And this is where our partnership with CXCO can be invaluable. By leveraging CXCO's expertise in the qualitative data collection and analysis, we can gather in-depth insights into customer experiences, preferences, and direct feedback. This qualitative information can provide a more comprehensive understanding of the market needs and trends, which complements the quantitative data to provide deeper insights into customer outcomes, helping firms to measure, monitor, and improve consumer satisfaction.
Fantastic. And Danny, TURN is a blockchain solution. Can you just walk us through what the role of blockchain is in ensuring auditability and reducing compliance risks?
Sure. TURN will integrate blockchain as a technology to provide a permanent, immutable audit trail. We will be operating a private network where TURN act as the kind of impartial controller between the firms providing the data to the firms consuming the data. We will be utilising what we call smart contracts to ensure transparency and auditability of any data movement on TURN. And a smart contract is just a digital signature that is automatically executed based on a set of defined rules. That smart contract will hold a unique hash, and that hash relates to any data package put on TURN. The hash is just a unique ID that is generated using the composition of the data file and that's recorded through the smart contract onto the chain at the point of data submission. So the hash is immutable. So that enables the industry to ensure that any data consumed can be traced back directly to the point of production. The key element to this process is to enable the industry to not only collectively form a single trusted data source, but it reduces the risks associated with data inaccuracies because well-managed data supports more informed strategic business decision making.
Excellent, thank you. So, Lisa, coming back to the point on the DFT and actually other sources of data, why is standardisation so important?
I mean, standardisation is important to the industry because it provides that comparability and operational efficiency. The regulator doesn't mandate standardisation. But they've also talked very much about, whilst they have this desire for the industry to leverage data, to be able to use data in a much smarter way, to be able to understand the customer's needs and requirements and design products and services to meet those needs, they don't want it to become a cottage industry. Now, the only way that we can move away from that kind of those operational inefficiencies is to standardise the data. So then the data can seamlessly integrate into firms' own systems and processes, and they can actually look at that data in a meaningful way and be able to use it to deliver the better services and outcomes to their consumers. So whilst I think that we're not going to see the regulator sort of mandate any kind of standardisation, I think the industry recognises that it's required. Certainly, standardisation is what we are moving to and is supported by all of the industry associations and their members. It's also supported by organisations such as Findatex, who haven't adopted the DFT because it's very UK-centric, but they do set precedents for standardisation with things like the EET and the EMT and the EPT. So I think standardisation is really an essential part of kind of operationalising this data piece. I think that the regulator again has expressed that desire for the industry to get better at this, and whilst they're kind of being very collaborative around consumer duty, so we've kind of seen them engage with the industry during the implementation period, I think on an unprecedented level actually. I don't think they're going to be shy of enforcement later down the line. So I think that there's going to be a period of implementation, a period of improvement, but we've seen that the regulator is already consulting on kind of changes to their approach to enforcement, including the sort of naming of firms are under investigation. I'm not suggesting that they're going to sort of come down on firms who, don't have something like the DFT in place from day one. But I think that the message is that they still intend to be a very strong regulator and use their enforcement tools where necessary. So I think that the move towards using data in a much smarter and smoother way and leveraging its power to deliver those good outcomes is a journey. And it's a journey that needs to have a destination. And I think the regulator wants to see the industry reach that destination.
Makes perfect sense. So, Danny, following on a little bit from that then, so how does TURN streamline operational reporting and distributors for manufacturers and distributors?
Yeah, well, standardisation is key. One of the biggest problems in the industry today is, I guess, is knowing who has my data, the capability to track who accessed my data, what data was accessed, and when it was consumed. Turn can solve this. We have an action that is time-stamped indefinitely. In the role of the DFT, the key operational advantage is that distributors can upload a single file containing your entire fund portfolio that Turn will map directly back to each manufacturer based on the ISIN registration. Manufacturers have access to a single data repository for all feedback, including aggregated dashboards, which can be used for board reports, for compliance reviews, and it also reduces the need for additional BI workflows internally. So Turn can kind of act as that central data hub to identify, assess, and review, your key indicators as part of your consumer duty obligations. So our partnership with CXCO will enable the distributors to feed the data back up the chain, aggregated percentage scores directly from consumer feedback based on the 4 core elements of the duty: consumer understanding, consumer support, price and value, and product and services. The ability to share this data easily up and down the distribution chain will not only elevate your partnerships, but it's a transformative approach to overcome current industry challenges for data sharing, reducing the burden of administration, and eventually a cost saving.
That's fantastic. I mean, you're absolutely right there. So, look, I think what we're learning here, or what we've learned, I think, is that consumer duty isn't just a regulatory requirement. It's an opportunity for firms to lead with transparency and accountability and innovation. So, look, Turn, alongside the CXCO, is here to help the industry, not just to comply, but actually to thrive in this new era. We're live with the DFT, and we're ready to support your journey throughout. So my thanks go to everyone on the panel today. I hope the session's been really useful. If you're interested in learning more about and exploring our tools and setting up a demo, please reach out. We look forward to continuing the conversation. So thank you.